Alright, we're back here with what should be a 8-4 Gatecrash draft. Let's see what we've got here. Undercity Plague is interesting, but not particularly good. Sunhelm Guild Mage is quite good. Generally, the plan is to pick a card that does not have two colors and only has one, so that you can kind of see what's actually open. However, the difference between Sunhelm Guild Mage and the Skinbrand Goblin and the Disciple and the Assault Griffin in power level is pretty disparate. So I'm going to go ahead and probably take the Sunhelm Guild Mage. I'd really like to not draft Boros, but I'm going to take this just in case I end up doing it. I try not to force entirely just because I'd rather actually play something that I enjoy playing. Rebel Hulk is a very good card. Tends to be really huge. It's expensive, so it would be the top of our curve, but I think that it's good enough to take over like Slaughterhorn here. Although again, Slaughterhorn can be played in enough different decks. I'm going to take Rebel Hulk just because I haven't gotten to play with it and it seems interesting. I could splash Rebel Hulk if I needed to, although the Boros deck really doesn't like splashing. Shanktail is okay, but not amazing. Slaughterhorn is good. We really like low drops. Pit Fight is good in Gruul, though not necessarily in Boros. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Slaughterhorn. Dinrova Horror is very, very good, but Slaughterhorn matches best with what we have. Scarred Goliath is okay, but again, it's an awfully late draw. Martial Glory is fine. I also like Hands of Binding, although it doesn't necessarily match up with anything else we've picked. Massive Raid is fine, but you really have to prioritize the low drops for it. And Righteous Charges, it's okay. Tempted by Massive Raid just because it would probably go in either Boros or Gruul. Though it's definitely not as good as Martial Glory, just on power level. Yeah, I'm not really pleased with my options here, so I'm going to go ahead and take Massive Raid. Alright, Dracoon Crassus is a very good card. It's starting to be a signal. Pit Fight is a good card for Gruul. I could see either Gruul or Simic playing Pit Fight, so I'm thinking that's probably what I'm going to take here. Debtor's Pulpit is fine in Orzhov, but it's not nearly as good in Gruul. Okay, I actually really like 5-Alarm Fire. It's not super amazing, but it's fun and interesting, and particularly good in Boros, just because it tends to get into combat earlier. But it is an interesting enough card, and it gives you some inevitability. So I'm thinking I'm going to go ahead and grab it, just so I can play with it. Ruination Worm is okay, but not amazing. Cynic Flux Mage is kind of late. We've got an awful lot of red cards, though. I'm going to go ahead and take the Ruination Worm just because it's so much bigger than Thunderfist, for only one more mana. And it is looking like we're playing Gruul. We could splash Sunhelm Guild Mage if we needed to, just because it's going to have the most effect late game, although obviously it requires white for each activation, so it's not as amazing. This is a late Frilled Oculus. It looks like Simic is pretty open. Verdant Haven would be fine, but I'm actually going to take the Frilled Oculus just in case. We could be Simic splashing Rebel Hulk if we need to. I'm not entirely set on it, and I don't feel like I should be set on anything necessarily. It's a bit too early for that. Scatter Arc is not great. That said, neither is Skyblind or Staff or Mortis Strider, especially in my deck or against me even. I think Scatter Arc is probably best here. Probably won't play it. I'm certainly not even set on blue. But this pack we're going to see what we can get and see what's available. Totally Lost is fine. Towering Thunder Fist is alright but replaceable. Hydroform is okay, but I would rather have Totally Lost if I was going to play blue. You know what, I'm just going to take the red card. Of course I didn't expect to get a million of them, but I should have remembered that that one might come back. Dutiful Thrall is the best card here. Foundry's Denizen is fine, but mostly fine in Boros. So we're going to take the most playable cards we can here. Forced Adaptation is not great at all. But it could be the thing. If we need a playable, we could take it. Keymaster Rogue can be okay in Cynic. I really prefer the other Rogue, the blue-black one, that can only be blocked by the Rogues, just because I really don't like having to bounce my own stuff. I feel like I never have enough stuff that benefits from it or can even handle it, really. So, we're going to see how this goes. Not a great first pack. Rebel Hulk, which I got second, is probably the most powerful thing I've got, but it's still not super amazing. Okay. I have taken up Marshall Sutcliffe from Limited Resources viewpoint, which is I don't pass Shocklands. It's just good to have them, and it's generally pays for enough of your draft if you end up selling them that it's worth doing. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Sacred Foundry. Again, that can help us splash the Guild Mage or anything that we pick up later. I suppose I should have looked a bit deeper at what else was there, but I was going to take it just because of how I tend to draft. Disciple of the Old Ways is good. Rust Scarab is fine, but we want low drops. Warjack Halberdiers is good. Alright. What do we have green versus white? We've got Pitfight is better there. We've got a Rebel Hulk. Basically, it's Rebel Hulk versus Guild Mage. I'm going to stick with the green plan for now. It seemed like it was a bit more open, and Disciple is perfectly fine. Probably going to take another Disciple here. Although actually Vioshino Shankill is also pretty alright. I'm wondering, they seem to seed cards into a set, like they put cards in a set that will be good with the mechanics of later sets. So I'm wondering what exactly Illusionist Bracers is seeding for. If that in, what is it, Twin Cast or Dual Casting or something from Avison Restored. I'm wondering if there's going to be some particularly good activated abilities or if it's just like, oh, there will be Guild Mages. Okay, so Shankill versus Disciple of the Old Ways. I hate doing it, but I think it's probably best just to load up on 2-drops. 2-drops are very, very important in the format. Treasury Thrall is here super late. Holy Mantle too. The card we're most likely to play is Spire Tracer, but that's not only super unexciting, it's also best in Simic. Foundry Street Denizen is alright, but not great. I could do Boros Guildgate. Tempted by things like Treasury Thrall, but really it's not worth a double splash. I'm going to take the Boros Guildgate. That would be good with our Thunder Fists. That is a super, super late Soul Ransom and Dimir Charm. Unfortunately, I think that ship has sailed. If I'd seen this pack earlier, I would have just said, alright, I'm blue-black, but we need to have discipline and stick to our guns. Burst of Strength is a good combat trick. It's one that I'm happy to have. Adaptive Snapjaw is fine. Again, seeing more blue-black cards. I really like Dimir, actually, just because it's definitely the most interesting of the mechanics, or the, not just mechanics, but archetypes even. So, I like to draft it when I can, but I really didn't see much of it in the first pack, so I'm betting there's a good chance that somebody, to our right is Dimir? Maybe not immediately to our right, or maybe the people to our right just didn't open anything too amazing in Dimir. But that pack was definitely pretty absurd for Dimir. Simic Charm is probably the best card in the pack. Skinbrain Goblin and Cinder Elemental are the next two. I think Skinbrain Goblin is just correct because it's another early drop. That is very, very important. And Cinder Elemental is good if it gets up to 1,000,000 mana, but who's going to get there? Naturalize is fine, especially against some of the enchantments. Enchant land stuff or some of the key runes. I like Mystic Genesis. I actually like Psychic Strike and Dutiful Throw. Somebody's going to have a lot of Dutiful Throws pretty late. But Naturalize is the best card for us. Wildwood Rebirth is fine. It's good with any of our Blood Rush cards. Armored Transport is okay. How are we doing on creatures? Because we want to make sure we have a lot of creatures. It's looking more and more like we will be green-red. So I'm going to go ahead and hide some stuff that isn't interesting. I'm going to leave Guildmage there. I think Wildwood Rebirth may be a bit better than the Transport. And we get a Transport anyway if we want it. That said, I think I'm going to stick with Burst of Strength. Yep. Skyblinder Staff could be an interesting sideboard card if our opponent has a ton of flying creatures, but that's iffy enough that I'm just going to take the Illusionist Bracers just in case I see something interesting. Spire Tracer is okay. Again, not as good in this deck. We already have something that destroys artifacts. I'd rather not play against Aerial Maneuver. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to ever splash it. I'm a little bit superstitious. I think that whatever basic lanes I'm past are the colors that I should be in, so maybe I should be Boros. Alright. Humming Lightning is very, very good. It is one of the reasons to play Gruul. Molten Primordial's okay, but it costs too much. Scablands Charger is better. But I'll take Humming Lightning. Again, I'm not going to pass a Shockland. I believe I need Watery Graves for my Blue-Black Zombies deck. However, the Sunhome Guildmage is quite good. Ember Beast is the card that we would play from this pack. But I'm going to take me a Watery Grave. It's hard to hide some of these cards that we really don't want to play and see where we're at. Alright, I'll take Godless Shrine. That card's worth some good money. Braintree Emissary is good. Firefist Striker is good. of the two, I would probably play Fire Fist Striker in this deck, but I'm not positive that that's correct. But again, I'm going to be nitty about my value cards and just try and keep paying for my drafts with them. Alright, Zertos Horn is good, Slaughter Horn is good. How are we doing on curve? I don't want too many 5-drops. While Zertos Horn is quite good, Slaughter Horn does a very good impression for a lot less mana. Alright, Disciple of the Old Ways. You know, I would have a hard time ever saying I have too many of those in a Gruul deck. Even in a Simic deck, I'm okay with them, especially if I've got some Guild Gates or something. But I really like having the little aggressive creatures in most decks, actually. I've had some okay luck with a blue-black aggressive deck, which is definitely not what you think of when you think of aggro, but I had a couple of the Cynic 0/1 flyers, and I had some good Cypher cards to Cypher on him. Agoraphobia is okay for removal, not great to splash it. Burst of Strength is good, but we've got a couple of them. I'd really like to have a creature. Scorchwalker's fine. It can kind of go over the top as a trick. It's between that or Armored Transport, but our 4-drop slot is pretty empty. I'm going to go ahead and take one now. Furious Resistance is best in the Gruul deck, I think, because it is the more defensive red deck, and it's the only card here that I would consider playing in my main deck. Miming Slime is fine. We've got a decent number of 3X's or 5X's or 4X's, so there's a decent chance that it'll get pretty big. Okay, so we started seeing cards that have gone all the way around. So we're not going to see any new cards. If I had the 2 lands, that's everything, even with the Sunhung Guildmage. I may be playing that, because I may kind of have to. I'm probably not going to need Shattering Blow. I'm going to take Spell Rupture just so I don't get my spells countered. Yeah, Shattering Blow is not as good as Naturalize, and now I've got 2 of them in the sideboard, so I'm perfectly covered. Massive Raid is actually a pretty decent pickup. I would consider that. Like I said, I'll consider Skyblinder Staff sometimes in sideboard. I don't have that many of this card, so I'll just take it so I've got it in my collection for some reason. I like trying to get a copy of everything just for the sake of having a copy of everything, so I would much rather have Serene Remembrance, even though I'm never going to play it in my deck, just so that it'll be in my collection as opposed to a mountain or a basic land. I think it's kind of silly to pass an actual card over a basic land. I know that, you know, it would be better in my deck, for example, for me to play a forest than for me to play that green card that I just ended up with. However, I'm not going to play it, and I don't think that any opponent I'm likely to have is going to either. So I should really, it seems like my the people passing to me should really just take whatever card is better, even if it's not going to ever be in their deck. Alright, cards like this look interesting at first because there's a lot of text on it, but then you realize, oh, it just gains you a little life, which is not enough. Life gain is, there are very few life gain cards that are good enough on their own without having something else on the card. For example, creatures with lifelink can be quite good because it's a decent creature, plus it helps in the race. But sorry, it's hard to talk while I'm adding cards. but cards that just gain life are not. One example of an exception is in Innistrad Block Limited. There was a self-mill deck, and there was a card called Nod of the Bone that gained you 2 life for every creature in your graveyard. Because you were milling yourself, that would often be 10 creatures, and if you can just gain 20 life, and it also had flashback, so you could then gain 20 more, that's gonna make it hard for your opponent to beat you if their plan is just being aggressive. So that is one exception of a card that just gains you life, but it's worth it. Alright, so, Massive Raid. We don't actually have that many creatures. Problem is, most of our removal requires having creatures. Furious Resistance does, Burst of Strength does, Massive Raid does. So, we definitely need to cut some of that because it's just not as good in this deck. Burst of Strength is probably best out of these things because it leaves a counter on something, so it's got a permanent effect. I could also consider cutting Sunhung Guildmage to not splash. But I think if I look at that as like a 6-drop or something and say, okay, well, you know, I probably won't get a white source until then, but I'm okay with that. That's fine. That's really pretty okay. Similarly, like, aside from the Spire Tracer, none of those are turn 1 plays, so they're like 3 or 4. Pitfight is also another one that requires us to have creatures. I kind of wish I had taken more creatures, but I would have had to either do it without staying open to, like, switching to Simic if I needed to, or over Shocklands, which I still prefer taking the shocks. Right, so I'm gonna probably end up playing both of those as my white sources. And that would leave me at 9 mountain, 7 forest. I'm gonna go 9-8. Like I said, most of my red is required for later things. Is it worth? However, they have a heavier commitment. So this would be 15, 16, 17. That would be 9-8 in favor of mountains. And because that's heavy red, that's heavy red, that's heavy red, and Scorchwalker is, I think that that's correct. That's only 2 sources for my Guild Mage, but I think I'm okay with that. Actually, despite needing it early, none of my green spells have much green requirement, so I think I'm going to add a 3rd Plains and say that that is where I'm going to stick. Wildwood Rebirth is not amazing, but we wanted more creatures, and it's good with Blood Rush, which we've got a decent amount of. It's good with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 cards? That's not bad. It's important to remember to submit your deck. If you do not, then you end up having to play with every card you drafted, and whatever lands Magic Online decides matches that. Alright, let's go ahead and end this video so that we can start into round 1. I'll see you there.